Anyway, so RethinkDB. So what is it? So it's a document database. Their tagline is open source database for the real-time web. Now there's a big push for this real-time web, and what that means and what that stands for. Really, more and more sites are moving towards this instant availability of information. As soon as they're available, users need to have it, right? And some businesses actually rely on that. So if you take something like HipChat, people need to know when information comes in. It can't be 2 minutes later, 5 minutes later, right? Bigger one I would say would be like stock apps, because markets go up and down within a matter of seconds. So all those seconds count, and depending on that, people either go broke or be bazillionaires. Another decent use case for it would be multiplayer games. A lot of places have leaderboards. They're always changing depending on what's going on in the game. That needs to be always updated. Streaming analytics. So for our logs and stuff like that, sure, we may not think it's important, but for someone who makes money based on having that instant availability, being able to react to quick changes and actually responding to those and fixing those issues, they will need that. And then with more and more this concept of Internet of Things, everything is connected to the internet, so everything needs to be synced up. You have these Nest thermostats, which you can control from your phone or your computer, and you got to know at any time what the temperature is and what you want to set it to, all that. You have your Teslas and all these fancy cars that are always connected. So it's moving more and more towards this idea that everything needs to know what's going on in the back end, but there isn't really a good solution to do that. The main problem becomes managing state. That's always a problem. Now, if you take an example like Slack, which has a web app, an iPhone app, it supports multiple platforms, everything needs to be synced up, right? So how do you do that? One way would be polling. Now, polling problem becomes, how often do you poll? Every second, every millisecond? How much is too much, right? So, and then you could also use something like Service Bus, but then you need to have, it's got its own set of complexities. How to route, who to route, when it actually got there, do you care, do you not care, all that things. So what RethinkDB is trying to do is become this one source of truth for your data in the back end, where all this is possible without having to layer on this extra stuff with either polling or Service Bus or something like that. So what is RethinkDB? It is open source database. It's a NoSQL database, JSON, schemaless format. It's distributed and it's easy to scale. That's a big deal. These guys, I think, it came out in 2009 or so, and they had been working on it for 5 years, and they've made it as easy to use as possible while also being very, very flexible. So it's very, very fault tolerant and high availability. Initial release was in July of 2009. It's widely used in production. Nothing notable except, there isn't a big except, and I'll get to that later. And a lot of people have said it's MongoDB done right. So it doesn't, it's got some cute features like it's simple, it's durable, and I'll talk about a little bit more about what that means. It's easy to cluster and shard. And it's got this really cool query language called REQL. Stands for Rethink Query Language. It's functional for all my functional folks out here, Jacob. And then it also has this change notification on queries. So whenever you query something, you can automatically say, all right, give me all the changes to this, and it will push that out to you instead of you polling for it. So those changes happen instantly. That means you get those feeds instantly. A little bit about the CAP theorem, what that stands for and how that's important for something like a document database. So 3 important things: consistency, availability, and partition tolerance. And what CAP theorem says is that for a distributed system, you cannot have all 3. You got to choose 2, and it's usually between consistency and availability. And RethinkDB chose C and P, whereas MongoDB chose A and P. That's one of the main differences between the two. Installation, it's available for Windows, Mac, Linux. There's also an official Docker Rethink repository, so it's super easy to have one stood up really quickly, tear it down, bring it back up. Client driver, they have a few official client drivers, so JavaScript, Ruby, and Python supported 100% out of the box. Also some community supported ones, and these are all the ones. There are actually 2 C# ones. I don't know why there are 2. They both do about the same thing. One of them has a fancy looking GitHub README page, the other one doesn't. So I guess that's going to be one we have to decide which to use and which not to use. They have all these other languages there as well. So it's taken over. I think it's got what was it, 10,000 plus stars on GitHub now. It's one of the most active document databases on GitHub. So let's see. I would hope so. I would very, very much hope so. So let's look at this. So I have, let's see. So I have this repo here, or sorry, directory here. And then, so to start, I've already installed it and everything. I just type RethinkDB, enter, and it'll spit out this bunch of messages. And the most important ones here are these 3. If you look at it, it says listening for intercluster connection on 29.0.15, client driver on 28.0.15, and then administrative HTTP connections on 80.80. So that means it's got a UI. So let's actually go to localhost 8080. And it makes it really simple. So they've given you this beautiful UI, a lot of things here. Like you can see, it's got a nice little ticker here. Tells you all the recent changes, tables. It gives you test by default, but you can turn it off if you want. Servers, I just have one server right now. And there's this data explorer. So creating a table. Well, it's as simple as doing this. Done. And you can go in here and you can look at further stats about this. It'll tell you, how many documents, primary replicas available, how everything is set up, and where it's actually going. So let's actually go to Data Explorer. And something cool about the Data Explorer, everything flows from R. And it gives you, anytime you hit a period, it gives you full IntelliSense support, including documentation and a little example on it. So here it knows that I have 2 tables, or 2 databases that I can use, RethinkDB and test. So I'm going to go to test. And then here I can go table, and then it also knows that I have 1 table users. I have nothing there, so let's insert something. First name, John, last name, Bill, and then age, say 30, why not? So you do this, give you a nice little information down below. It'll tell you it generated some keys. By default, it needs to have a primary key. It'll generate a GUID for you, and it doesn't just tell you done, or completed successfully, great. It actually tells you what it actually did, right? So it told you it inserted 1, then replaced and skipped, and nothing was changed, no errors, nothing like that. And now if you just do this and highlight just that, you actually get the full list. And you can do table views, or raw view if you want. So there's that. So now let's actually do Jane. Age, and let's make her, I don't know, 29. So now we have 2 items in here. you can see that. So this is a very, it's the REQL. That's what this query is called, REQL. It's kind of intuitive, kind of not. It's got a lot of things you can do. They have full documentation over at RethinkDB.com. Fancy site. So they have a 10-minute guide, I think 30-second quick start, 10-minute, and I think there's also a 15-minute. 30-second, 2-minute, maybe 10-minute, but they have, yeah, quite a few of those. And go to the API, it'll tell you all the things that you can do, all the different queries that you can run, and it's all fluent, everything flows. So it makes things really, really simple. And you can do, let's see, so if I want to filter, let's see, I guess I could do r.row age dot greater than 30. That works. Maybe 29. So I think I made that one person 30. Yep, there you go. So you can do that. And you can keep chaining these. And then to get only one, you just select this ID that you provided to dot get, and then you pass in that ID, and that will just give you that one back. So it's pretty intuitive in what you can do, what you should do, shouldn't do, all that. So now let's actually look at something else that it can do. This was really, really an unexpected feature I found out about. So there are a bunch of sites that have just pure JSON data, right? So here I can do HTTP, and then I have this one. I hope I type things correctly. Nice. Yes. Huh? Yeah, that's yep. It'll work. Yeah, there you go. So anyway, so I got this entire data back, but from here, yeah, okay, embedded. Wait, I think I spelled that correctly. Sure, it doesn't matter. Yeah. Anyway, so here I could do DED. Run that. Maybe I did copy things wrong here, but I had this stored. Was it embed? Oh, okay, embed. Okay, there you go. Oh, that had embedded. I don't know why that worked and why it actually gave me something. That's odd. But here I'm not storing anything in the database. I am strictly just working off of this JSON data that I found online. And I'm just going through it and just kind of picking what I want. So here now I'm down to only episodes. So if I look at the table view, I can actually see all the data that this JSON provides. And I haven't done anything to this yet in terms of data storage. So now I'll keep going. I'll pluck out ID, name, date, okay. So I'm pretty happy with this data set. So I will save it. So first off, to create a table, yeah, you can use the fancy GUI, or you could just do it from here. So I'll say in the, whoops, I don't know why I did that. Table create, I'll call this Futurama. And I'll run this, and it will tell me that it created a table. And something to notice here is this durability hard. It's durable by default, and what that means is that it will only acknowledge once the write is successful. So if the write fails, it failed. So it won't say, oh yes, maybe it will work down the line sometimes in the future. It will actually say, yes, this is successful. That means it's in the database. You can change all that if you want. Since you're just creating the table right here, you could pass them this entire JSON, set all the properties yourself. But I just went with the default one. So now what I'm going to do is, because this all just changed, I'm just going to say .insert. And I already have my JSON right here. I'm going to run this. Yep. So I was able to look at a JSON that was available online, a fairly decent size, 124. It's not a lot, but it was okay. I was able to work with it, filter it down, get it down to exactly what I wanted, and then save it. And something you'll notice that it did not generate those IDs that it was doing before. It's because by default, Rethink looks for this ID property, and if it has that ID property, I'll just use that. So then no need to create anything else. Normally, you don't want integers as IDs as your primary keys. So you'll either want something composite or something a little bit more, something that can handle a lot of data, especially if we're working with big data. So now, we're done with this. Just query this as is. We get everything here. And now we can keep working with this some more. We could order by descending. Date. So now all the newer ones are up top. Also filter row. I'll filter on row summary where it matches vendor. So I only care about the episodes which talks about vendor, or has that in the summary. And there are quite a few, 35 of them. From here, I'll only pluck the name. Why not? And then from here, I'll skip the first 10, and then I'll limit it to 10. Now, it reads fairly well, right? So you just have to, sometimes it's a little funky. Some of the API calls, you may need to look it up. But if you don't do that, you can just order by that directly. It'll do it ascending by default. So dirt simple. Something else I mentioned, it was easy to cluster and shard. So come on, there you go. So here I went to a different directory. Previously I was on Rethink. This is Rethink 2. So what I'm going to say, I'm going to do port offset. So by default it uses this 29015 and 28015. I'm just going to offset everything by 1 so I don't clash. And then I'm going to say join localhost, and the 3 ports that I said are important. So this is for the intercluster one. This is where you used to connect. So I'm going to say 29015. And immediately you'll see that the server was ready, and it said it connected to server Francis Freeman right here. So now if you go to the UI, you'll see there are 2 servers connected. 2 primaries, 2 no secondaries. So this says this has 2 tables here. If I go to Futurama, because this is more important to me than my users, I could reconfigure this, and you'll notice that it'll say max of 2 on both of these. That's because it knows there are 2 servers to actually shard and replicate. So I'll set it to 2. And then you can even look at this cool thing. It'll tell you exactly where your data is going. So as you update this, tell you where it's going to go. So there's no surprise. Do that, and then there's a little bit of a spike in your write, and then eventually, now, there you go. So we just split it more or less evenly. One thing I don't understand is why it says about 100 documents. I don't know why I can't just tell you exactly how many. I have not been able to figure that out. Like I could go to Data Explorer and just count and just run this, and it'll tell me there's exactly 124. I don't know why it can't just do that, but anyway.
It takes more time to process that.
Probably. I don't know why it just can't be a property that gets auto-incremented every time there's change. I mean,
he may be hashing them out or something like that.
It could be, yeah.
Just counting those.
You don't want to constantly cause locks together.
I guess, yeah. I guess that makes
If
sense.
you only have 100, who cares? But if you have multiple millions.
Multiple millions, yeah, that can actually affect it.
So you have the Futurama data now in both servers?
In both servers. So like you can see what's going on here. 60 documents and roughly 70 documents.
Where does the term shard come from?
That I'm not sure.
I was just wondering.
Shard means that that data is not all living on one particular disk or file or whatnot. It's actually broke that the whole result of the data is not in one location.
Okay.
Pottery shards, breaks that base.
Yeah, multiple shards. Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
It's a collection of
So-
servers.
so
A collection,
literally
a shard is a collection of
Literally
servers.
half those documents are on one server, the other half are on another server.
Okay, so they just use
So
the
they're
term
not all in
shard.
one place.
to
then.
group
No,
servers.
but they're also replicated. Going to be highly available.
They're technically still in both
Yeah.
locations, but logically speaking, half the documents are on the primary,
Mhm.
right? So the idea there is if you have a cluster of say 50 of these database servers and you shard them out, they might shard off to a primary that's on one server, and you might have maybe a max of 3 replicas, where it's replicated to 3 of the other 50 servers, not all 50.
Okay. So in this case, because there's only 2, you're kind of
Yeah.
limited. But if you
Yeah,
had
like I could spin up.
multiples, He
It
would,
makes
he would stripe them out.
it
across.
horizontally scalable.
Yeah. So here I could spin up, 5 more instances and have it be sharded and replicated to 2 out of 5 or 5 out of 5. So makes things kind of easy, and that's the whole deal with, if one of the nodes goes down. So for example, if I just kill this, immediately it'll tell you, hey, you have one issue. It's available for outdated reads, but not up to date for reads or writes. So it knows, like, because it was sharded and replicated, data you might not get what you think you're getting. So there are ways to fix this. Now, if I had more than 2 servers, it would have automatically elected a new primary or something, like there's a term for it. And then it would have automatically replicated everything properly. It'd be all good. But because half of them went down, you don't have the majority to say, all right, who's going to be the primary now? So that's the reason that this kind of fails on me. But and another way to fix it is you can go and do emergency repair. Like, I think this will even tell you how to do it somewhere. Maybe. But anyway.
Now, if you had done some updates on some of the records that were on server 2 originally while server 2 was down,
Mm-hmm.
when you reestablish your connection to server 2, would he give updates?
It should. I'm not sure if this does. I haven't tried that yet.
That's generally what happens.
Yeah.
On the secondary.
Yeah. But how difficult would it be to do something like this on any other system, right?
It would be a nightmare.
Right. And now you can easily.
They're already doing this.
No,
Yeah, but there's probably a lot of infrastructure set up to do is what I know.
So, like now you have, 2 in your cluster. You could have 50 all of a sudden, and then you just say shard, and you're done, right? So it's the easiest thing in the world to do.
You got to be careful with that though, because you start to get millions of records, and if you're not more logical about how shards are happening, you can't remove all these concerns.
I'm sure that could be a topic on its own. Wink, 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 wink. So something I mentioned earlier, changes. So because this pushes out changes automatically, and changes are applied on a query, so I could add changes to any of these at any time. That doesn't change. No, it's definitely changed because it auto-filled it for me. I'll call changes on eager stream. I have not seen that before. If I do something like, come on, dude. Just run that. Yes, okay, sure. So let me actually just remove all that. Let me throw that to the side. And actually go to this. So you'll see that this is listening for events. So what that means is anytime anything happens in this table, it will show that. So for example, let me actually go in here. Let me just query this really quickly. And then let me do .get ID of 49288. Have 1, I'll update that. And then here I'll change the name to be Space Pilot 3001. And you'll notice like it's pretty handy. This data explorer is very, very handy. It'll tell you, if you're missing something or if you put something in incorrectly. So it's just nice to have stuff like that. So here, notice as soon as that happened, let's go to the tree view. I'll give you the new value and the old value will tell you what changed. So that way, if you only care about one view of it, you can just subscribe to changes to that and not have to worry about anything else. I don't know why it didn't let me do it for the top, like when it's filtered, but that's one of the ways you would do a leaderboard, right? You don't care about all the scores of every player on a game. Maybe you only care about the top 10, and they could go up and down, and some might go higher, some might drop lower, some might just completely drop out. So that makes things a little bit easier. So now on to the next thing. So here, let me just do, come on, dude, don't fail me now. Yeah. That's what I wanted. So smaller than I thought this would be. There you go. So here I've already started a node package or node project. The only dependency I have is Rethink. Then here I have this little app. So all it does is auto connect. So connect to that port 2815, because if you noticed from up here, 2815 is the client driver connections. So that's what I connected on. And I said RDB test, table Futurama connection, just give me everything. So I'll save this. And it just gave me everything. So one of the coolest thing about Recall is this translates directly to JavaScript. So for all their officially supported client drivers, it's just whatever you fill out here. So you can do all sorts of crazy things here. And another cool thing that I wasn't planning on mentioning was history. So now you can just take one of these. Let's see. It's the one that I want. I want to load this. Maybe not without the changes. I'll run it. 10 rows returned. Awesome. So I'll just copy this. Paste it here. So the only caveat is that you need this run method. That's the only difference. After that, run it, and it'll give me exactly what I told it to give me, the top 10. Changes work the same way. You just add dot changes, and not quite sure why this isn't working. Maybe this will work, but I'm sure I'm missing something here. Yeah, there's something going on here with this. It does not like that query. But let's see. Let me just delete that, and then delete that. Does that make it happy? I think so. All right. So now, let me go in here. It's over here. Okay, so if I were to go back to this and take something that I updated again. Where did they go?
We did it on a different tab.
Oh, did I do it on a different tab? That one? Oh, hey, there you go. So let's change it to, I don't know, 9,000, over 9,000. Oh, this probably did not mention Bender at all. Eh. Yeah, I will just completely delete this. Done. Ha.
So essentially, you're subscribing to the changes that happen in the database.
I'm subscribing to changes, and I built a query, and I know exactly what I care about, and then I subscribe to changes on that. So now if I were to do 8,000 here, ha, there you go. Same thing, new val, old val. So with this, you can combine this with something like Socket.io, push it out instantly to your web apps, to your front end.
Is that what it's essentially already doing? Because I saw Socket.io in one of your startups.
In one of my startups? So Socket.io,
Go to in your upper right.
my
Or
up,
left, excuse me, the one we don't see now.
oh, over here. This shouldn't really mention Socket.io
I
anywhere.
thought I saw it on one of your screens.
I saw it too. It's okay.
It's possible
Yeah.
to back-end servers using.
Yeah, it's possible.
That's irrelevant.
So
Socket.io mainly browser-based.
more browser-based, yeah. It's you could use Socket.io, you could do Signal-R, you know, whatever whatever flavor you want. Yeah, yeah. So so that translates directly. All your queries translate directly here. So you could take your time, build out some crazy query that you care about, and then just copy and paste and you're done. Guaranteed to work. So yeah, it doesn't have any of the big names that you would be familiar with as far as being used in production. There are quite a few, but one of the biggest one I
Do you have
found.
any way to throttle that changes? Like for example, if you're using a fire hose, handle.
I'm not sure. I haven't looked that up yet. Good. Good. I'm sure there's something. In fact, let's actually just go to db.com. So options, changes, run, connection. So there are optional arguments. Squash are batched, so you could batch them all, so you don't get constantly hosed by it. Queue size, include initial, include states, offset. So I don't know if you can quite throttle it,
Yeah,
but
that's the only concern I have is that if you did it on a table, for example, that millions of records, you get into a situation where you're pumping changes faster than the consumers of the stream can handle.
yeah, I guess you, the only other thing would be maybe, yeah, batching them all up and
thousands.
a little singer. Anyway, so yeah, it's
Can we replace Raven OEPM with this?
I wouldn't advocate for it until we do some pretty intense testing and yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, it's good as
I'm not saying coding, it's
Tell me,
just OEPM.
yeah.
big companies already using this and using it and happy with it.
So one of the biggest companies to use this, most surprising, NASA is using this. I was genuinely surprised. So apparently they have this old database that was built in the 80s or 90s or whatever. And what they're doing is they're taking data from this database, sending it through a transform layers, feeding it to the Rethink, and then anytime that changes, they have a change feed going backwards. So people who are still using the old one are still getting updated data. So they're doing stuff like that. And I'm like, really? NASA, I thought
They
this
may
was
be
a,
using it on old data for people to process. as
old
opposed
data
to-
and new data, apparently.
Well, yeah, so you've got a space probe out there, it is pumping data out, but it's not managing the launch functions.
don't know. Yeah, they wouldn't go too deeply into it. There's a little video that they sent the Rethink guys, but anyway, so yeah, it looks pretty cool. It does a lot of things well. It was built for JSON data. It wasn't, it's not like Postgres where, it has JSON support. This is what it was meant to do. And, you have full admin control over it.
So what kind of load did they advocate they can handle?
I think they've mentioned like few systems are throwing a couple millions at it, and they've had few companies do stress testing and hasn't had any issues with it. But like I said, because we don't have a lot of big companies using it in production full time, it's really hard to really know what the limits are because load testing can only give you so much.
Now, the query language was cool. Looked like it was very easy to do. You mentioned that you can do joins and stuff with it.
Oh yeah, so like.
I mean, obviously you're going to need a table.
Yeah, I'm going to need another table and
So,
something relational and all that. So they have inner join, outer join, equal join. So let's just look at this. Pretty straightforward table. You could EQ_join game ID table games and run. So
I don't see an on.
it is joining on game ID.
Automatically.
Yeah. So if you want to,
ABCs equal things.
yeah. So if you want to join on something other than, you can specify the index to join. So like that. But there should be one. Where did that go?
How does that work with this?
So it automatically indexes things that come in based on the ID. From what I've been able to gather, you can provide secondary indexes, or you
It
could.
goes down through MapReduce functionality.
I think so, yeah. And the other cool thing about Requel is all the queries run on the server, and they're parallelized, so it's not run on single thread. So it can bite you if you're not careful with it, but you do have that power. Let's see if I can find the one that you were talking about. Use secondary index on right table rather than the primary key. If the players have secondary index on their cities, we can get a list of regions with the players in the same area. So it's not quite as straightforward as join on where equals. So it takes a little bit of getting used to, but once you do, I mean, it reads fairly simple, right? It's not too convoluted, and yeah, you can do stuff like this. I didn't show something where you could. Well, I kind of did with the other example where you can have a row, and then you can say, all right, also give me the row off of this, so everything chains really nicely. Let's see, I don't think I forgot anything from mine. So yeah, any other questions?
I don't think you really looked into this yet, but how easy would it be in your mind to port a Raven database backup into
Not easy at all.
Yeah, that's what I
because
thought.
there's a
That's
reason we're
sure.
using Martin, and there's a reason Martin was built is to make that easy. This was not designed with that in mind, so yeah, we'd have to completely rewrite a lot of things to do this, just because the query
Or build
language is
something that builds
completely different.
JSON objects with
We could build a layer sort of like
Yeah.
Martin that translates it all, but yeah, that's just overkill at
That's
that point.
ugly.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if there'd be like a
Whatever,
super
pull-
easy way to get a
Pull all
huge
the queries
database.
and updates into an interface
Yeah.
and then just program to that.
100,000 developers. Yeah, so these are some of the companies that are using it full time now in production, but I don't think I've heard of anything other than NASA actually uses it. Apparently, the CTO
Jive
from
was
Mongoose
off my tongue.
thought that this was awesome, which is
That company's in down north, right?
what company?
I don't know. I
Jive? I
I
don't know.
recognize it from somewhere. I've seen Jive before.
Jive.
It's down north, I think.
That's probably why.
Mongoose being the MongoDB driver.
Yep, MongoDB driver. One of the most popular ones, I think. But, yeah.
Support of EVA activities.
Yep. So it's been used in a pretty interesting way at NASA. It's not just some.
It's not some just old data.
Yeah, no, it's actually being used from what I could gather. So I don't know if that tells you, anything, but if it's good enough for them, kind of thing, I don't know.
It really depends on what their data needs are.
Yeah. But yeah, that's true for any kind of document database. It's if you don't, it has a very specific use case. It's not for every scenario. So
None of them are.
yeah. Sometimes relational database is the way to go. But other questions? No? Cool.